Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Amelia, and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at the OPMA. I'm here today on behalf of Michael Miranda, our committee chair, who was unable to join us due to some technical difficulties. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Loblaws for sponsoring today's webinar. I also want to thank the members of the committee for their hard work in putting this together. The Young Professionals Network is a group led by a committee of 10 members from across the industry. The objective of the network is to provide opportunities for people under the age of 35 to meet, share ideas, learn, and inspire others. Today, we are joined by our committee secretary, Madison Hopper, as she speaks with a passionate guest about some of her experiences and challenges in the produce industry. Madison is the marketing manager for Equifruit, which is a produce company that sells fair trade certified bananas. She is very passionate about the rights of farmers and sustainability strategies in modern day supply chains and teaches a class at York University called The Business of Fair Trade. Before I pass it on to Madison, I would like to invite everyone that's here today to please post your questions in the chat box over at the side throughout the presentation, and we'll be sure to monitor those, and they will be asked throughout the duration of the webinar. Without further ado, I'll pass it on to Madison, who will introduce our guest.
And thank you, Loblaws, for sponsoring this month's Young Professionals Network speaker series with none other than my colleague, Kim Chackal. Kim is the Director of Sales and Marketing for a Canadian fair trade banana company called Equifruit. Kim has had an extensive career in sales, working in a variety of industries for the past 20 years. For the past 5 of those years, she has been the principal driver behind growing the market for fair trade and organic bananas in Canada. Anyone who has had the opportunity to work with Kim, or anyone who's been pitched to by Kim, knows that she is a passionate and tenacious saleswoman that will stop at nothing to improve conditions for banana farmers and build markets for her producer partners. So today we will be discussing the topic of sustainability in produce, and we're specifically going to be looking at fair trade and fair trade certification. And as Amelia explained, if at any point during this webinar you have a question for Kim, please type it into the chat box on the right side of your screen, and I'll be sure to insert that into our conversation. So without further ado, thank you, Kim, for joining us and sharing with us your passion and your expertise. I'm going to turn my screen share off now. Great, and so Kim, we were hoping to start with a question of how did you get started in sales? Tell us a bit about your journey and your sales journey and how you came to sell fair trade bananas.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. I just want to start by saying that over the last 7 months, I've been attending so many different webinars. And so I just want to let you know that I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I really hope that you don't end this hour thinking, what a waste of time, that you actually leave with some nuggets that can help move you forward in your career, wherever you are in produce. So to answer Madison's question, how did I get into sales? So I don't want to date myself, but my sales career started in the early 90s when I was in about grade 3. And so I got the sales bug. Just to give you a little bit of backstory, my parents are both immigrants to Canada. And from a very young age, I was really taught the value of a dollar. And so my parents used to drive to the States. I'm born and raised in Montreal, but we used to drive over to a little town called Plattsburgh to do a lot of our grocery shopping and our clothing shopping because the prices were better there. So just to give you the context of like the life that I grew up in. So anyways, my mother was a great encourager of my entrepreneurial visions. And we were in a supply store one day that sold art supplies. I bought a bunch of string and stamps and little ink pads because going to a little all-girls school, I thought, you know what, there could be a market for this. These stamps and things are on special, so I'm going to buy low and I'm going to sell high. And so I, gave up recess for the next couple of weeks or months until they literally shut down my small business. But I was just loving, I got the sales bug from a very young age. So fast forward 10 years from there, My parents really taught me that I have to go on to higher education. I have to go to university, but I have to pay for it. I think that they were really teaching me the values of appreciating the value in what you're paying for. And so I moved my way through university, working through a marketing agency that specialized in the spa and beauty industry. I did door-to-door sales for them for years, which was the ultimate sales training. And from there, I moved into the catering industry, was an event planner for many years. I had been to culinary school at that point, so I could lend my voice to the kitchen and menu planning. And, you know, something told me from a young age that I had a talent for sales. It was something that I really enjoyed, and I enjoy the rush of a sale. But it got a little bit old, and it got to the point where when I was starting my family, I thought I want to put my talents towards something that I could feel really good about. I think that kind of, there was a growth in my life where I was becoming more and more of a conscious consumer. And so I wanted to make a career change. So about 6 years ago, I met the president of Equifruit, Jenny Coleman, and it was a fair trade pin on her lapel that got us talking about the fact that she had made this brave move of buying this small banana importing company. It was focused on fair trade. I had become interested in fair trade years earlier and started buying fair trade coffee and chocolate, but had no idea about fair trade bananas. And immediately I thought, this is a great opportunity because I think everybody buys bananas, and I don't think anybody knows fair trade bananas exist. So the world was my oyster in a sense, and we quickly decided that our mission was going to be to make fair trade bananas available to all Canadians, a mission that we're still hard at work at. But that's essentially how I got in the game.
That's fantastic, Kim. I love the story about you doing stamp arbitrage as a kid. I know a lot of people do that with Bitcoin nowadays. That's funny.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good time to tell us a little bit more about fair trade and explain sort of right at the start what fair trade is.
Sure. And so I hope that you've all heard fair trade by now. I'm sure that when a lot of you hear the words fair trade, you think of coffee or maybe chocolate or tea. So just speaking broadly about fair trade, when you think of fair trade in 2 words, what we're talking about is decency in the marketplace and business, because at its core it's business, but within an ethical framework, making sure that there are advantages to the buyer and the seller. Equifruit, we're a small Canadian female-run company that imports fair trade certified bananas. So I'll show you a bunch of our lovely bananas, and you can see here the fair trade mark. So what I'm pointing to here is the mark that you would see on our fair trade bananas. Similar mark, same mark that you would see on Ethical Bean Coffee or Camino Cocoa. So whenever you see this mark, and going forward in the presentation, I'll be referring specifically to fair trade. We choose to be certified by fair trade because it's the most widely recognized, most trusted, most valued fair trade certification in the world. It has a presence across the globe, and we work with the local chapter of Fair Trade Canada. Fair trade, so yeah, the question is, you know, what is fair trade? It's business, but within an ethical framework. So when you see this symbol on our bananas, you know that farmers have been paid a sustainable wage, and that they're working within standards that protect their livelihood by ensuring social and environmental sustainability. So there are 2 perspectives, right, in fair trade. What are the responsibilities of Equifruit, the importer, and what are the responsibilities on the other end of the supply chain? So from our perspective, Equifruit, we have to respect pricing standards. So minimum prices that reflect the cost of sustainable production to farmers. And that varies by country and commodity. So we work with small cooperatives of farmers in Peru and in Ecuador. All of our bananas are also certified organic right now, although we intend to eventually sell fair trade conventional bananas. But we see value in this certification because it is the most widely recognized and known label. And in the same way that you wouldn't want to buy an organic product that wasn't certified, it is important, in my opinion, to look for that certification. It's a certification that carries a lot of weight and trust. There was a recent survey done by Leger, commissioned through Fairtrade Canada just back in August, that really demonstrated that there's a high level of trust and awareness, recognition of that brand. So that's on the seller side. So if we go over, or into the buyer side, if we go into the seller side, so back to our farmers in Peru and Ecuador, under fair trade standards, we're looking at a number of elements, but essentially standards that make sure that there's safety in place and there's sustainability in place. So making sure that they have the right to unionize, for example. There's no forced child labor, that if they are using under conventional farming, if they are using pesticides, that they have the protective equipment to make sure that that's not getting into their water stream and that that's not affecting their health. So on our side, we have that minimum price, and we also have something called a social premium, which I didn't touch on. So in the case of bananas, we sell 40-pound cases, and for every case that we sell, there's a $1 US social premium that goes back to our farmers. What's really cool about this certification is that it's the only fair trade certification that's 50% owned by producers themselves. And so they're involved at all levels of decision making, especially around price. So what is a sustainable price? A sustainable price should at the very least cover the cost of production, right? Which for those of you that work in produce, you know that from week to week, there might be that fluctuation. And our Peruvian and Ecuadorian farmers, they don't have government subsidies to protect them through unforeseen events like COVID, for example, or environmental disasters. So yeah, I'm sure we'll go into that in more detail, but that kind of gives you a broad overview of what is fair trade and why is that important to Equifruit.
Topic of a sustainable cost of production, thinking about coffee over the last 2 years. If anyone working in produce on this webinar has been watching coffee markets, you'll see that it's been dipping below $1 US per pound, which is below the cost of production. And so what that means is that all of the costs that go in, like the fertilizers, the inputs, the beans, the price that they get when they go to harvest is below that price that they paid to put in all of the inputs in the first place. And so it becomes a really dangerous thing when you're playing with commodities because because you're kind of gambling. You don't know what price you're going to get for your product. And so at this point, for a lot of coffee farmers, it's when they lose their land. Maybe they have loans now; they can't repay them for the cost of those inputs. So this cost of production is so important. And thanks for bringing that up. I have a question from Michael, and you did touch on this a bit, but Michael asks, in fair trade, what is considered to be a sustainable wage, and how is that determined? So maybe a distinction between cost of production and wages, if you don't mind elaborating.
Yeah, so what I touched on earlier was specific to FOB pricing, so pricing at source, which are these minimum prices per case, right? So what's nice about fair trade is it's very traceable and very transparent. So you can actually go onto fairtrade.net and look at the prices and premiums database and see what that minimum cost is. So so just to repeat, farmers work in conjunction with Fair Trade International to determine what are those minimum prices, that floor price that they know that they'll be able to cover the cost of production, pay the wages. But then Madison also brought up a point before that there is this distinction between wages, like paying your actual hired laborers, for example, versus the price. And so what we're talking about here is that minimum FOB price and that minimum premium per product, which varies by commodity and country, whether it's conventional or organically farmed.
Distinct about Equifruit, we're currently buying from this model of farmers. So we're buying from a cooperative of farmers that own their own farms. So they're not employees. So we're paying them a fair wage. I know in hired labor models now, we are now moving into a living wage model, and a living wage is determined by the Global Living Wage Coalition. That doesn't pertain specifically to Equifruit, but once we do start sourcing from plantations and hired labor models, then the workers on those plantations will be earning a living wage, which is happening right now, actually, with Fair Trade International. So Kim, when you were describing your career in sales, you were talking about how you've sold products from spa packages to catering and events. How is selling those types of products different from selling fair trade bananas? Is it a different mindset or a different toolkit that you need?
Yeah, so if I compare it directly to the spa industry and to events, those are two industries that people are out there buying those products, right? We all need to get our hair cut. We all need to go out and buy beauty products or have services, self-care services. So when I was approaching people with that opportunity, or later when I was actually contracting spas and getting them to sign on to this marketing plan, I was already speaking their language. They understood the product. They saw the advantages. Similar to events, right? We all celebrate. We all have opportunities where we gather. Maybe not so much this year, but people keep getting married and having parties and celebrating and cooking, and so there was a lot of awareness of these products and services. And my job was to have a clear value proposition. And it doesn't mean that there wasn't a lot of rejection and that I had to still hone my skills in selling. But when I entered into the fair trade banana world in 2015, most people had not heard of this product. This Cavendish banana is the same banana that you'd see in your grocery store if it's not fair trade. It's the exact same variety. And what I'm selling is that once you put this logo on the banana itself, that suddenly this is a more special banana. And so there's a lot of education that needed to be done, and I was initially met with a lot of confusion, some laughs, not a lot of support at all. And one of the challenges at the time was that the PLU on our bananas, this code here, right, that's going to be entered at the cash, was the same as an organic banana. And so under the guidance of CPMA, we went to a retailer assigned PLU and modified it so that should a retailer want to have both offerings, then they can still sell organic bananas and organic fair trade. So there were a number of challenges, but the big challenge was lack of awareness, lack of education around certification, and a disbelief that customers would be willing to pay more for what's known as a known value item. That was a big challenge.
So what's a known value item?
So known value items, bananas, bread, milk, eggs, these are a couple of known value items. These are meant to index the pricing of your store. And what's believed is that customers have an awareness of the pricing on these products and gauge how expensive or inexpensive your store is by judging the price of these particular items. So the idea for bananas is that if you walk into a discount retailer and you see conventional bananas for, let's say, 59 cents a pound, now you're meant to believe that the whole store is competitively priced, and that if low prices are of the greatest value for you as a consumer, then that's where you might choose to shop. And so the inverse is true. If you see an expensive banana or expensive bread or expensive milk, then perhaps everything is expensive. And if that is not attractive to you as a consumer, you might choose to shop elsewhere. That's the belief in the industry.
Right. That's very interesting because, as you know, I teach a class on fair trade, and it's quite a few young people, millennials or younger. And we do have a class on bananas, and I ask them what they think the price of a banana is, and absolutely none of them have any idea. And then I'll ask them, what do you think your parents know how much a banana costs? And then they say, oh, probably, yeah. So do you think that perception of a banana as a known value item has changed over the years?
I believe so. I believe it's changing, and with certain customers, we've seen that it's absolutely changed. So just to give you a little bit of context, as I said earlier, our bananas are both organic and fair trade. So when we're approaching a retailer with the opportunity to start a fair trade banana program with Equifruit, we are often proposing that they switch out their organic bananas for our fair trade organic bananas. And this is initially a pretty scary decision for them to make, but we've seen success over and over and over. There has not been one instance in my career with Equifruit where somebody has taken a chance on us and put this product in, which is typically retailed, an organic banana at 99 cents, and then brought that up to about $1.29 a pound. There hasn't been one instance where sales and tonnage has not increased. So we're seeing an increase in sales and tonnage. We're often coupling that with support in terms of merchandising material. And it's just been success over success over success, which indicates to me that customers are not always shopping on price, and that there is an opportunity to reprice this item in the grocery store on both conventional and on organic.
Right. That's great to hear, and it is interesting because we know that the price of bananas hasn't changed, over the last decade very much, and it's always been held with this esteem and aggressively competed on their low prices. I have a question here from Vijay. Going back more into the granular details of fair trade certification, Vijay would like to know, how do you monitor compliances like fair trade, organic, GAP, etc. for your produce?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's one thing to make sustainability claims, and it's another to assure your customer base that those are being followed up on and that you are being compliant. And so fair trade is audited by FlowCert, and they do annual audits. Same thing for our organic certification with EcoCert. If a importer or supplier is not playing by the rules, not respecting standards on pricing or any of the work standards, they will lose certification. So there's certainly a lot at stake, and compliance is very important. And so I say that because sometimes you will see sustainability claims on products like fairly traded or better price. And I absolutely respect, you don't need a certification for every sustainability move that you make. I applaud all sustainability efforts, but there are certain instances where there is great value in having that certification, so that you make claims that you can be sure are being respected, right? And that you can impart that confidence to your customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see a lot of these competitor certifications or these general terms, right? I know, as I understand it, and I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure that these different terms that we use on eggs, like cage-free or free run, there's no organizing body that really monitors whether or not they're free run. It's just a quote that you can put on your product. I'm pretty sure there's some of those. So there's a lot of ambiguity in certifications. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on, if we compare fair trade to, maybe a Rainforest Alliance or some other in-house initiative, what is it about fair trade that makes it stand out to you?
So Rainforest Alliance is probably a certification that a lot of people are familiar with the little cute frog, and it's not a fair trade certification. It is more of an environmental standard. They have made changes to their certification, and you might even see it on bananas or other products in your grocery store. What's different from, and I'm not an expert on Rainforest Alliance, although we do take a lot of time to be up to date on what competing labels are making claims about. What's of the greatest value, I think, the greatest value proposition with fair trade on our bananas is really that traceability and that transparency that we offer on pricing. And the emphasis really is on redistribution along the supply chain. We, maybe we're half an hour into this webinar, and maybe some of you don't know, but the reason that Equifruit exists, the reason that this company was started to put fair trade bananas onto the market is not because there were not enough bananas on the market. God knows there are bananas everywhere. They are very affordable, and you can have as many bananas as you want from now till the day you die. But what was not available before this company got started in Quebec and Ontario is an ethically sourced banana, a banana where you knew that the farmers were being paid well. And unfortunately, the banana industry was built on the backs of farmers. Don't take my word for it. Google, how did the banana companies get started? And the term Banana Republic is not just meant to be a fancy clothing store. It really speaks to large multinational companies seeing an opportunity to bring a commodity to North America and drive down the price to make it widely available, scale their businesses. And who took the brunt of that? The workers who were harvesting the crops and the environment. So that enraged our group, our little team of women that is Equifruit. We saw the opportunity to share that message with customers across North America and to give them the opportunity to have the option of fair trade if that's something that's of value to them.
That's great. Yeah, I think too, from what I've learned about fair trade and what I teach as well, this idea of producer ownership is something that I think is really unique to fair trade. Like, there's no other certification where the board of Fair Trade International is 50% producers, and the voting rights, is 50% producers. So if any decision is going to be made about the way that the system works, you have to talk to every stakeholder. It's like this built-in check and balance that this system has. So you don't get, people sitting in North America making decisions on behalf of, the entire supply chain and producing world. I'd like to shift course a little bit and now ask you a question about being a woman in produce. This is something that our committee had an interest in learning about, and I'd love to hear just your experience being a woman in produce, your thoughts on it. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm a woman in produce. I work with other women in produce. When I got into the produce game, I was surrounded by women. Jenny was this brave woman who had decided to buy this company with no experience in produce, and none of us had any experience in produce either. So I think it's valuable to have the support of women around me. And I see that there are it seems like there are many more opportunities for women in produce today, perhaps compared to 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. I see more opportunities for women events, women in produce events, women in produce awards, which I think are all valuable. We're all human beings, and I don't think that being a woman or man makes a difference. If you have a strong value proposition, your buyer should take you seriously. And I think that what's lacking is the presence of women in this industry. And I know that we all know that women are the decision makers at the grocery level. They're the ones that are in the stores comparing products, reading labels, looking at nutritional labels, evaluating sustainability claims. The majority of the decision makers are women. And so there is an underrepresentation of women in the industry. I'm sure. So that's come with its mixed experiences of meeting some men in the industry that were not so welcoming to our mission as an organization, as a company. But I also can say that all of my customers are men, and I deal with a lot of great supportive men who have been on board with our mission and who support us as a company. And maybe I'll leave it at that. If anybody has any more specific questions about being a woman in produce, go for it. If there are any other women in produce on this call and you feel like you don't have a voice, give us a call at Equifruit. We do like a weekly rah, rah, rah. So we can get you all pumped up and you can be part of our circle.
That's amazing. Yeah, so continuing with your experience as a saleswoman, when you go into a sales meeting, how do you prepare to pitch an idea like this to a customer? What's your process? What research do you do? How do you prepare?
Yeah, so produce is a very fast moving industry, as you can all appreciate. You're always thinking about what's on the water, what's at the market, how old is it, how fresh does the product look. My buyers are busy people, and I've really come to appreciate just how busy they are. So whereas when I first started in the industry, I think I was a little bit naive, thinking like, oh, I'm just going to tell them about fair trade and boom, these bananas are going to be everywhere. And then with time, I just came to appreciate they're busy, they're managing hundreds of categories, and that if I'm going to take some of their time, I really have to come incredibly prepared. And that's something that I really value in the sales process, is great preparation. So I don't think you can ever be over prepared for a meeting. I've compared preparing for a sales meeting like getting ready to be put on the stand in a court case. You just never know what question is going to come out at you. You never know what soundbite might catch the attention of your buyer. So my process is visiting the retailer first, visiting their stores, getting a feel for what the stores look like. What's the experience of the shopper in their store? What was my experience? What did I notice? What are they emphasizing? What's on the end caps? If I want to get a sense of their current commitment to fair trade, I'll often go into the coffee aisle or the all natural aisle, and I'll see how many brands are fair trade certified. I'll look at their chocolate selection, their sugar selection, their tea selection. I'll go and see if they've got Ben & Jerry's ice cream, which is also fair trade certified. And once I have that, do they have any private label products? Like a lot of the major Canadian retailers, their private label coffee is fair trade certified. So I think it's really important to be aware of what they already have that's fair trade certified, because what we're offering is to open up that opportunity in the produce section. And we even offer partnership on a merchandising and marketing level to help the consumer in that store make the connection between that certification around the whole grocery store, and not just on bananas. And we'd love to eventually get into other products, and we have tried other products, but we think that there's a great opportunity there.
That's great. Yeah, when you talk about how you go through the aisles and you look at coffee and chocolate, like we know that those are the most popular fair trade products. I think fair trade coffee is outpacing a coffee without a sustainability claim by, I think it was like 16% on the latest Nielsen report about the subject. So with that being said, like seeing how these other products are becoming mainstream, ending up in mainstream retailers, moving out of what I call the hippie aisle, where you put all of your socially conscious organic granola stuff and putting them into the right next to the deep discount stuff and right in with the rest of the coffee. How has that changed? How has that arc been for bananas? Compared to 5 years ago, when you go into a pitch and people might say you're crazy because this category convention hasn't been established yet, to now where we know Equifruit is growing. I think it's an average of 18% a year. More stores are getting on board. What does that arc look like? How have things changed?
Yeah, well, I'm really appreciating how much more emphasis there is being put on organic, and how produce departments are being set up. You see organic right as soon as you walk in, and 5 years ago, often it was tucked away in the back corner, kind of like the all natural section or natural goods section, where you have to go searching for it. A lot of the retailer partners that we've worked with have started to put our product out more front and center, and we've seen a huge impact on sales. So I think that's been a major change, which I think is driving awareness, because often we'll couple the product with, at the very least, it should say fair trade and organic bananas, and not just organic. You have to, if you want to move this product, you have to make sure that your customer knows that it's also fair trade. We'll often do custom POS material too, if we can talk a little bit more about what that means. So we've seen a huge lift in sales whenever there's information and proper signage at the point of sale, and whenever we can drive marketing opportunities across all the channels that are available to us. I think that now more than ever, people are spending a lot more time in front of their computers and screens and taking the time to research brands and do their homework about who they want to support. So having a presence online is very important. Yeah, at the moment, we're actually going through a rebranding at Equifruit. So if you look at our current socials or our current website, there's going to be a major improvement in the coming months, where we'll be equipping our retail partners with some really bold, beautiful messaging to pump up the awareness on fair trade. And I just want to add something, because I didn't complete my answer earlier about being prepared for a sales meeting. So if you don't mind, I'll just go back a step. Absolutely, visiting the store is a great first step. And if you're visiting, let's say that you're trying to get into a really big retailer, the advice that was given to me was go to their most recently built store, so that you have a sense of where that retailer is going, and not maybe the stores that were built 20, 30 years ago, and that's really where they've been, but where are they going? What's important to them now, and how has that evolved? But then spending as much time as you possibly can to learn everything you can, every single detail you can about that retailer, from when they started, why they started, who works there, what is employee retention like, what's important to them, do they have a CSR policy, does it say anything about fair trade, do they have a sustainability plan, what is their commitment to ethical sourcing and ethical procurement. Nobody's going to just buy a more expensive banana. You really have to come in with a strong value proposition, and the more prepared you are, the more you're taken seriously, and they'll pay attention to that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I mean, one trend that I've noticed, attending webinars from, in produce topics, is that the use of data in building a value proposition. And how much more of an emphasis today there is on this data and being able to measure how consumers shop, where they shop. What is some of the data that you've been able to use or will be able to use in your pitches?
Yeah, we're really excited about some recent data that's been focused on fair trade. So I mentioned earlier that this Léger study came out in August that was surveying customers across Ontario and Quebec in the more urban areas, and gauging their level of interest and awareness and support of fair trade products, and then did a deep dive on all of that awareness and interest and price elasticity on bananas. And what we learned through that study was that 90% of the respondents are aware of fair trade. 68% had purchased fair trade products in the past year. That having the fair trade mark, so this logo on their product, had a positive impact on the opinion of the product. When doing a side by side, 46% thought that it was worth paying more for, that it was trustworthy. And then specifically about bananas, what was incredibly exciting for us, they were given the respondents of this survey were given a little bit of information about what fair trade means. So coupling that education with then these follow-up questions, after understanding a little bit about the impacts of fair trade, on an environmental and a social level, 55% were likely to buy. 19% were willing to switch retailers for fair trade bananas, which was incredibly exciting for me. And yeah, I think that on the topic of pricing elasticity, because you all have to be thinking, especially if you're a buyer, you're like, okay, fine, maybe they'll say they'll pay a little bit more, but how much more? And 75% of the respondents of this survey would be willing to pay more for fair trade bananas. And 38% of those would be willing to pay up to 30 cents more, and 22% were willing to pay up to 50 cents more per pound. So I don't know if you know how much bananas cost where you shop, but I would say in Ontario, on average, the price for a conventional banana is around, I'd say 69 cents a pound is probably the average. In Quebec, it might be a little bit higher, maybe 79 cents a pound. And then organics are typically 99 cents, and in Quebec, they're much higher, around $1.29 a pound across the board with all the major retailers. So imagine the willingness to add 30 cents or up to 50 cents more per pound when they know that it's going back to support fair trade and to support small-scale farmers. That was also another really interesting soundbite, that 80% of the respondents thought it was very important to support small-scale farmers and fair trade practices. And so what's so exciting about this data, and we have more in the pipeline, is we're all experiencing a global pandemic right now, and a lot of people must have been thinking to themselves, you know what, we're gonna just put a hold on spending right now, and we're gonna be in self-preservation mode. And and thankfully that hasn't been the case. We've been incredibly grateful and very, very lucky to be in the banana industry, but people have continued to buy bananas during this time. I know that it has not been the same experience for everybody across produce, especially those in food service who are having a really challenging time right now. But we're just very, very lucky to be working at the retail level, and for customers to continue to support our brand. At the height of the pandemic, we saw an increase of about 60% in sales with no change in price. Just to be clear, we work on long-term contracts with our producers, so 1 year at a time, and we lock into this price, so there's that stability for our buyers. And then you see that stability on the retail level as well, where we don't deep discount to drive sampling, where people know what bananas taste like and they can make that decision. They don't need, our experience has been that if you lower the price of bananas to drive sales, you end up losing sales, or you end up, you increase your tonnage and you lose sales. So we're really coming forward with a fresh approach to this, and the response has been incredibly positive, and this data is just so encouraging for us. So far the response has been great from our retail partners.
Yeah, that's so awesome to hear, particularly the 19% willing to switch a grocery store to find bananas. I mean, that's just a dream. And so from this data, it seems like there is a demand for fair trade that potentially has not been fully met yet. Mm-hmm. And so if a buyer were to start a fair trade program and wanted to attract some of these customers, mm-hmm. What's like the secret sauce for a very successful fair trade banana program?
Yeah, well, similar to any sustainability initiative that your company might be investing in right now, maybe you're investing in more ecologically friendly packaging, or you're talking about carbon emission. On the fair trade side, we think it's very important to make it clear to your customer what you're doing. So it has to be clear that this banana is fair trade certified, or if you're working on reducing packaging, make sure that that's written on your new packaging and on your website. We see that education at the merchandising level is incredibly important to build sales. So we're not expecting for a retailer to just buy our product, get rid of the organic bananas, and expect for it to sell. We want to support them in terms of attractive POS material. We want to go into the stores and demo and talk to customers. We want to engage with them on social media campaigns. We want to put information out on their e-commerce platforms. We have a whole bunch of cool stuff in the pipeline. We'll be investing in videos and other tools so that you have some short and simple and clear sound bites that give you that key takeaway, that basically you're paying a little bit more for these bananas today, but the impact for the farmers is tangible, it's measured, it's reliable, and it's significant.
Great. That's fantastic. And you'd mentioned when you do your research, you look at sustainability reports of organizations, and it seems like more and more stores or larger businesses are coming out with sustainability reports, and more sophisticated ones that have GRI methodologies behind them and these types of things. So what kind of collaboration does Equifruit do with retailers that have a sustainability report and might want to be reporting on this impact? Like, what are some of the things that you would advise they include?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to report on a program with a fair trade banana program with Equifruit is on what I mentioned earlier, which is that social premium money. So for just going back, for every 40-pound case, through our retail and distribution partnerships, we're paying $1 back to the farms, and that $1, that social premium money, which is going to be reinvested in projects that improve the environment and infrastructure and society, that will be reinvested in those projects. And so I think that reporting on those projects and talking to our retail partnerships about what projects that those supported, whether it's recycling projects or composting projects, I want to get a sense of what's important to them as a customer in their reports. If they're focused on the environment, then let's share stories about clean water projects in Peru, or bananas are grown with plastic bags around them. Our Ecuadorian producers took those bags and figured out how to melt them down and turn them into pallet support. So talking about a more circular economy. So there's the social premium, right, where we can actually count how many cases did you buy, and at the end of the year we can say, okay, you bought 10,000 cases of bananas, so $10,000 US went back to these types of projects, and we can share those stories. And I think it's those types of stories that really engage your customers and get them connected to not only the Equifruit brand, but you can leverage that relationship with us to show that you are turning your banana section into a values statement about your business. And on the most highly visible category in produce, bananas represent typically 1% of sales in the whole grocery store and about 10% of sales in produce. So to make a value statement on your bananas, it's not going to go unnoticed.
Definitely. That's a great insight. And so I want to pivot a little bit because I get this question asked to me all the time, and I'd be really curious to see how you respond to it. As you know, Equifruit is growing. We're getting more visibility. Fair trade as a concept is growing in Canada, and frequently I'm faced with this question. And the question is, what do you say or think when somebody tells you that now that you're sort of starting to put fair trade on the map, one of the big banana companies is going to come in and they're just going to crush you, and that'll be the end. What are your thoughts on that?
I hope Guy Raz from How I Built This watches this one day and knows that crush you reference is in there. What do I say to that? It's totally possible. At the end of the day, the big banana companies have vertically integrated supply chains, and they can absolutely scale this up. There's certainly capacity for fair trade bananas, so they could go ahead and do it. Going back to something that I said earlier, which is why did Equifruit come into existence? We were a response to the way that the big banana companies were doing business. And so I think that there's a lot of value in our integrity as a brand that has been committed to fair trade sourcing since day one, offers up value to customers who are doing their research and who want to support brands that do good. There's a lot of strong data out there that demonstrates a strong interest in fair trade, and knowing that a brand is authentic and that is doing what they say they do for the right reasons, and putting profits as a secondary benefit and really putting people first. I think that although we're a small company that's rapidly growing, we're actually growing at 20% a year over year. There's certainly value in working with us, because for the people out there, those aspirational and advocate customer base that those market segments that are going to go out there and support this product, they're also the ones that are sharing information. And something that I learned very early in my sales career was that people are 10 times more likely to share negative information than positive information. And so, a lot of people have heard about the banana industry and banana republics, and they don't do much about it, or they haven't seen what the solution is. But I think that when people do their research and they see that we're this small, focused, dedicated group of women that's disrupting the entire banana industry and getting a lot of attention for it, and not just that, but that our product is really high quality, and that's the foundation of a successful produce program, is quality, and that we're a reliable supplier, and that we're experts in marketing this product. Nobody can go back into our history and say, ooh, but you've got some skeletons in your closet. And I don't know if the same can be said for the competitors that you're asking me about.
Right. Thank you for that. I do have one question coming in through the chat from Michelle. Michelle asks, The cost of producing is increasing for local produce as well as all over the world. However, people are often not willing to pay more for food, complaining about rising costs of produce. How do we as a whole industry help consumers understand the true cost of food?
It's such a great question, and you're right, Michelle, that it is a big challenge. I've recently joined the QPMA, some of their committees, and we're going to work on those challenges. From what I've learned so far is that a lot of times consumers are looking for local produce, but they don't know that it's local because it's not obvious on the packaging. So again, if you have the opportunity to really emphasize that on your package and put it at, front and center, that's very, very much important. I think that also, like, this is just a personal sentiment that over the course of this pandemic, that there has been a lot of time given to talk about supply chains and global supply chains, as they've all been threatened on a number of levels over the past 7 months. And I think that from the data that I'm seeing, people are willing to pay more, but it has to be clear where this product came from. There are certain instances where you're simply priced out of the market, but as a whole, if you can communicate the value proposition to your customer, I think that they are willing to pay more. And I thought about this the other day when I went apple picking with my family the other day. So I drove out to a little orchard in Quebec. I picked the fruit. I put the fruit back in my car and drove back, and then I weighed my bag and compared it to how much it cost. I think it ended up costing me something like 99 cents a pound for this fruit. And I thought, oh my gosh, the conventional bananas that come from three weeks away on a boat that are then professionally ripened and then distributed on a series of trucks are still less expensive than this apple that I had to go out and pick myself. So I think that customers are ready to connect with those stories and to make those connections. It's up to your organization, to your marketing team to share those stories and get people to understand what it is that they're paying for, right? If you're going to switch to, for example, a fair trade organic banana, and you previously were just an organic banana shopper, the cost of conversion at the end of the year is only $9. So that's based on about ingesting or purchasing 15 kilos of bananas per year, which is about the average of Canadian consumption. And if you were, let's say that you're that 69-cent banana shopper, conventionals, you've never heard of fair trade organic, and today you made that switch, over the course of the year, it would cost you $20. So it's my belief that should be affordable for most people, and that they would see great value in what the impact is. And so I know that for me, when I first heard of this opportunity to get involved in fair trade bananas, I just didn't know. Before I met Jenny and she said, bananas should not be cheap, farmers are not paid well, I just didn't know. And so you don't know what you don't know. But once you do know, then it's up to you to make a choice of what are you going to do about it, right? And being a conscious consumer, it doesn't mean that you make all of the best choices all the time, right? If I track my own journey, I can think that I'm slowly integrating more organic products into my home. I'm buying those fancier eggs that were really comfy and cozy and organic, or whatever happened to those. I want the chickens to be happy. Suddenly I care far more about these chickens. If I care about people, I should care about chickens, right? I've recently got my family on board with bamboo toothbrushes, because like, why does it have to be a plastic handle when it could be biodegradable? I didn't make those decisions overnight, and I am far from perfect, and I'm sure that all of you are making smaller, better choices. You just have to see if there's a story that would resonate with you, surely it would resonate with your consumer base. And putting that information out there in the form of videos and pictures and even just words, I think engages people and gets them excited about your brand.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we talk about, in my class, we talk about the value of a t-shirt and how it's so subjective. You might pay, an obscene amount for a Gucci shirt, but next to nothing for fast fashion. And it's like, the willingness to pay can be influenced once you know more of the story. Playing with different things like scarcity or marketing really helps. So we're almost done. We're at 11:56. I want to give Amelia a chance to say our farewells. Kim, if you could, for just 1 minute, if there's any advice that you have for young professionals who maybe want to get into sales, work in sustainability, or maybe they work in a company right now and they want to advance sustainability within that company, what sort of advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think it's great to approach any initiative that's important to you with a posture of humility. Recognize the challenges that the financial stresses of implementing sustainable measures. I think that it's important, if you have good ideas in your organization, to do the research on what's possible, how much it will cost, and come to decision makers with a clear understanding and a clear business case for why you should do things more sustainably. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you've just started, but you just see that this is where the industry could go, I would encourage you to explore your ideas, learn from the people around you, never stop asking questions, never think that you have all the answers. And being involved with these types of industry associations and rubbing shoulders with other people in the industry and learning from them and learning about what they're doing. You never know how that might encourage you to make choices. I would look at the sustainability plans or CSR reports of any company that you're working for. I think that in this day and age, it's absolutely necessary to have those. And so, and if it's not the case, then talk to somebody about how you could get a sustainability committee together and think about what your goals could look like over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So certainly a great opportunity. Yeah.
So much, Kim. We really appreciate having you. Amelia is back online. Amelia, if you could kick us off for the end of the session.
Yes, thank you so much, Madison, for guiding that conversation today. And thank you so much to Kim for joining us and giving us such a fresh and wonderful perspective on fair trade and telling us more about Equifruit and the wonderful work that you guys do there. Thank you so much to Loblaws again for sponsoring today's session. Thank you all for joining us. Please be sure to follow the Young Professionals Network on LinkedIn. The information is on the screen, as well as on Instagram. We post things like these upcoming webinars and have some conversations on there. So please do join. And thank you so much for being here. Thanks, ladies, for your time.
Thank you.